Joining us on the show today for the first time is a man you all probably know best as the co-creator of Billions, writer of movies like Rounders, and now co-creator of the new show on Showtime, Super Pumped, The Battle for Uber. It is Uber tennis fan Brian Koppelman. Welcome to the show, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm great, man. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time, and obviously the show comes out on Sunday, and I had the chance to watch it. I mean, for a guy who's 26, you have everything you're looking for. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Kyle Chandler, the possibility of just mountains of cocaine being used at some point in this show. It was a delightful experience to watch, and I imagine it's been a busy couple days for you.
It has, yeah, because the show came out 2 nights ago. The second episode will be up this Sunday, and yeah, look, I love getting to make stuff, and this cast and crew is incredible. And this story is unbelievably compelling to me. The story of Uber, it's really a story about America and the world right now and how we view business. And obviously it's something I'm endlessly fascinated by, as I am endlessly fascinated by the game of tennis.
Yeah, no, I like to hear that. Season 17, you can tell the story of cracked rackets. We're not there yet, but eventually when you're searching for storylines, you know, a young, charismatic Jewish male from the Midwest, you can tell my story. I look forward to seeing it all. But you talk about your tennis fandom. That's something, obviously, we want to explore today. And it was very funny. I was doing my research, listening to some of the other tennis shows you've appeared on, and you described a match you recently played as your first match back from COVID. And to me, I'm like, all right, this is a pro. He's like, yeah, I'm making my return to the court. This is the debut. I love that framing. Talk to me about your relationship with this sport. And obviously, I know it's meant a lot to you during this pandemic as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, I've been playing tennis my whole life. You know, I've never been a 5-0 player. I'm a 4-5 player. Okay. That's where I live. Like beat most 4-0s, and I never beat any 5-0s. And the 4-5, I'm like a weak 4-5. But I'm, as the listeners of this show are uniquely know, like, that means you've put, like, to get to a place where you're able to play, even at my age, 55 years old, like I could still play with 4-5s and not be ridiculous. It's just, you can imagine the amount of hours that I've put in on the court in my life. And, right. So there's no, if I were talented at it, I'd be a 5-0, right. But the sheer amount of time, the game just brings me back. It's got elements of all the sports that I love the most. I'm a basketball fanatic and I'm a golf freak too. And what's amazing about tennis is you have to work as hard physically as you do if you're playing full court basketball, but you have to have the mental control and discipline of a golfer. And people don't understand this who don't really play tennis in a serious way. I mean, one of the great things about tennis is you can play it in a way that doesn't demand those things of you. You can play tennis in a very casual, relaxed manner if that's what you want to do. But if you approach tennis as something you want to get better at, and if you kind of put yourself, one of the things I love about it is forces me to be hyper present. Like I can't, if I play tennis distracted, it's not rewarding to me. And so, but if you want it to be that, you're engaged physically and mentally fully. And I think that was a gift of the game for me during pandemic. So I've played my whole life, but I took a long time off. So I'm lucky that I played as a kid enough that I have strokes. I know how to play the game. But look, it's one of those things you can learn late in life. And there are guys like Steve Nash. I was lucky enough to play with Steve Nash recently. And, when you're Steve Nash and you're one of the 100 best athletes of our lifetime, you can pick up tennis 4 years ago and look like you've been playing your whole life. But most people can't. There's something about learning strokes when you're young that just enables you to have a certain level of comfort. But I took a lot of time off. I was obese for a while. So trigger warning to anyone who doesn't, feels uncomfortable about that kind of thing. But sure. I'm 6 feet and I was walking around at like 260. And so I wasn't able to play because my hips would hurt or my knees would hurt. But a couple months before pandemic, I made the real conscious decision to try to get back into some semblance of shape. And tennis became a gigantic part of that. During pandemic, I was mostly in upstate New York, and there's a place near my house that there's one indoor court.
Okay.
And so I could go to that one indoor court at night with either my son, who's a good player, or one friend of mine who's my level, and we were all in the same bubble, and we played all the time. And then there was one pro up there who I would hit with sometimes when it was nice outside. I hit with him all the time. And I got to a place where I was playing 5 days a week, 6 days a week in some way, shape, or form. And not only did I end up, losing a lot of weight, but my tennis game came back, and I had the kind of concentrated, focused attention on the game that I couldn't have had in another situation if work were in a full-on mode, if I were shooting. So like I was able to transform my forehand to like a modern forehand. So that also required a lot of like watching. It was amazing, right? Sure. It's also the perfect time. I mean, you're doing this with crack. You're like, it's the perfect moment of, if anyone's listening to this, I assume everyone listening is a tennis freak, but if you're not, like, it's the perfect moment because everywhere you go on social media, you can watch as much specific tennis instruction and examples about the game as you could possibly want. So I could watch hours of the progression of the modern forehand, and I could, think about how to apply it and try to, you could be looking just literally watching the way somebody turns. You could literally be thinking about what a unit turn means or how to apply it. And you can look at so many examples of it. So it was kind of like the perfect moment to re-engage with the sport as a player, not just as a fan.
No, absolutely. And a couple of things I got to follow up on there. A, you talk about building the modern forehand. Are we talking going Jimmy Connors to like Rafa Nadal here, an extreme grip change? What does that look like? What is Brian Koppelman's forehand? Because I was hear the inside-out forehand, that's your ball.
Right. Oh, yeah. I was really pleased that Mark Lucero said that on his podcast, that he complimented my forehand. That was really great. Well, luckily for me, I grew up watching Aaron Krickstein.
Okay, sure.
And he made me want to let hit that inside out kind of Western grip forehand anyway. But as you know, I love talking to this audience because like most people just have no idea about any of this. But like the Krickstein Borg kind of Western forehand is different than the follow through. The angle of attack where you have the head of the racket is very different now than it was then, probably because of the equipment or whatever the reasons are that we're able to. I mean, the way one followed through back then was always, over the shoulder and kind of turning the racket over as opposed to windshield wipering it. And so that's really a huge adjustment in the way that you're thinking about and where you want to make contact with the ball. And all that stuff's just different now than it was then. I mean, nobody talked about a unit turn back then.
Sure.
In any
For the
way,
record, they still don't in tennis. I don't think anyone's ever called it a unit turn specifically. I think they call it just the turn, but I know what you're referring to, of course.
No, man, go look. There's thousands of lessons from top pros on I could send them to you on YouTube and everything where they call it a unit turn. That's sort of like a term of art now.
All right.
Like right now, people are calling it that because it's not just turning. It's like where your hands, it's turning the whole unit, they say.
Okay, sure.
I
like it. No, I'm in. Look, again, I got to get out on the court. This is what it's telling me. This is why my forehand's gone to shambles. But, you talk, and there are, again, a lot of different things there I want to follow up on. Obviously, you mentioned growing up a fan of Aaron Krickstein, and I am from Southeast Michigan and Jewish. If you are that, you played tennis, you obviously know who Aaron Krickstein is, but, he was part of that 1991 run from Jimmy Connors, and you directed a film, This Is What They Want, the 30 for 30, told the Jimmy Connors run through that 91 U.S. Open. More broadly, and, again, because I know you have been a tennis fan your whole life, and you tell this story in the doc, but can you describe for our listeners the sort of rock star that Jimmy Connors was? And I know you look back in time and, you look at the individual branding now of football players, basketball players. A lot of that comes from the individual branding you saw from people like McEnroe and former, guys like Jimmy Connors as well. Were these guys rock stars? Was tennis the thing in the 70s, 80s, early 90s?
I mean, they were enormously famous. If you were a sports fan at all, I mean, if you were a fan of the culture,
sure,
you knew who those people were. I mean, Borg, McEnroe, and Connors, and then Agassi were, they were as well known as any athlete could be. I mean, during that time, the NBA, for example, as everyone knows, like the Magic Johnson's first title was not televised live in most of the country. It was televised on tape. I mean, imagine that the last game of the NBA Finals is televised late. It was not live. So like tennis had a huge place in the culture then. And Jimmy, it's funny when you ask about my forehand in high school, though, even though I loved it, was a two-handed forehand. So,
Monica Seles out there.
It was way before Monica Seles. It was like Fru McMillan was the name of the guy and Gene Mayer. They were the guys who had the two-handed forehand. But then soon thereafter, I switched to like the Westerny Kriegstein thing. Look, Connors, I love David and I, my partner, Dave, he's my creative partner. We make all this stuff together, David Levine. He and I grew up playing tennis together, and I grew up working at the US Open. So for me, those guys were larger than Chris Everett and Martina, by the way. I mean, the Chrissy and Martina and Tracy Austin and Pam Shriver. I mean, these people were enormously, I mean, obviously I was a freak. I could still imitate Virginia Wade's serve, and I know what Ivan Gulagong's ground strokes looked like, but sure. But I worked at the Open. I sold clothes at the Open for 3 years. I would sneak into the locker room and stuff. And when I found out, like, Andrea Jaeger was a Van Halen fan like me, I was like, oh, maybe she'll hit with me on the court. But those figures, look, Connors was unabashedly only about winning in a way that nobody else at that time was. He was impolite, and he was a killer. And you looked the other night at, it was Zverev who did the thing with the racket
in
on the,
Acapulco.
and look, Connors and Mac in some way have a lot of responsibility for that, I think. And as a kid, of course, I loved it when they would give these asshole umpires that much shit. They never got physical with the umpires. And also back then, I think the umpiring was way worse and the technology was way worse and all that stuff. And we were living in a society then that I think ceded much more ground to authority than it does now. So, and there wasn't as much of an imbalance then in terms of now when you have players earning that kind of money and they're hitting down like that, it's really gross in every way. But as a kid, you loved when Connors would get, when Connors is playing Nastasi and they're screaming at the umpire, you're loving it, because you first of all, you're a kid who wanted to yell at the principal of your high school, right? Or your middle school. And so these guys are kind of like acting out in that way. But I will say, like, seeing the way replays work, how often, look, sometimes people get stuff wrong, but there's so much opportunity to correct it now, most of the time. And ultimately, it's on the player to control the situation and control their emotions. That's part of what's so difficult about tennis is that you can be warming up and make every serve and hit your forehand exactly where you want it, and you're loose and free. And then the moment it's 3-all and it's your turn to serve, and you hit a decent serve somehow, and then the ball comes back to the service line, and you have to fucking put the ball away, suddenly your arm doesn't want to move freely. Suddenly you seize up a little bit, and suddenly the ball sails. And that, you can't put topspin on the ball, or suddenly you look up because you want to see where the ball is going to go. And so you top and hit it. And ultimately that's where we have to look when we look at the results of our tennis matches, is at our own inability to control ourselves. And so I look at Zverev. Yeah, look, Zverev's in a doubles match. He's the best player on that court. Zverev should win that match. It shouldn't be 8-6 in a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be in that situation, and that's where I think, and as a result of that, instead of looking at himself, he's smashing the chair. Let me ask you a question as someone who studies this and cares about it and talks about it all the time. Are you cool with him just being able to play in the next tournament and go on?
Well, even beyond that, and I don't know how closely you follow everything, Zverev faces serious allegations of abuse, of a former girlfriend that the ATP is currently conducting an investigation for, but we've heard no updates on it. And to have the cloud of that hanging over him, to have this incident as well.
You see that behavior, like and I haven't read enough about that, but yes, horrible, terrible, should be not on the tour. And then imagine you're facing that, and you're kind of like that. The idea of telling on yourself. I mean, if someone wondered whether those allegations might be true, it certainly seems like Zverev was telling on himself there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it's so difficult because he has been typecast as the future star, right, since he walked onto the ATP Tour at 18 years old. And it has not been a linear path for him. It hasn't been as clean as, the rise of, say, a Roger Federer or a Rafael Nadal. And with that in mind, I'll flip things back at you. You're a storyteller by nature. I'm curious, as you look at the future, and we'll focus on the ATP Tour right now because I know we're in the post-Serena era, seemingly for the women, but they've got a lot of stars on their hands, and it feels like there are already some established personalities.
I love watching their match. I mean, I love watching
the parody.
Women's tennis. I watch it all the time. I watch them as much as I watch the men now.
No, absolutely, and I want to get back to that, but as you look at the post,
you look at Barty and how smart she is on the court. It's like the most amazing thing to see somebody just be able to take people apart the way she does. Incredible.
Well, how about the fact that it's just also so translatable across surfaces for Barty? That's the fun part. Is it? You're just like, well, it's going to work on grass, and she already won a French Open. Like, good luck.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I was really, what's the woman's name? Jennifer, from UCLA, who has the hurt
Brady
right now.
Big Forehand, of course.
Like, yeah. I was so rooting, like that big breakthrough last year, and then I was so sad she got injured. And her playing against because I want to talk about the parent thing. I mean, her playing against the daughter of the guy who owns the Bills, who's incredible.
Yeah, Jeff Pegula.
Coming up. Right, Pegula. It's so much fun. I don't know. There's so many stories. Narrative. For me, I find a lot of narratives in women's tennis that are fascinating too. But yeah, let's talk about the ATP Tour.
Well, no, I think it's cleaner. And again, I want to get to that. But as you look to tell the story of the post-Big Three era, and I want to quote something you said when describing Super Pumped on a recent show. You said, "We don't want to have them say or do anything that seems out of character with who they are in the world." Then you took a pause, and then you go, look, the show has to be fucking entertaining. And I think that's a really good point. And I think that's something tennis struggles with, which there's this perception of class and culture. At the same time, we love Nick Kyrgios. We need a dose of fucking entertainment every so often. How does tennis strike that balance best, in your opinion, moving forward in the post-Big Three era?
Well, I mean, we are clearly not in a post-Big Three era.
It's true.
I mean, one of the big three is currently the best tennis player in the world.
Yeah, I would argue
and
the two best.
That's Rafael Nadal. That's Rafael Nadal I'm talking about. Rafael Nadal's 15-0 this year, man.
Crazy.
He's 15-0. He's won 3 championships. Right at this moment, Rafael Nadal is the best tennis player in the world. The other guy is not playing tennis. So in majors anyway. So I can't speak to whether he's still, as good as Nadal. But I mean, watching Rafa this weekend too, just do it for the third time, and the way he took care of that match was crazy. It's crazy how great he is. It's insane how great he is. It's one of these things where, look, Roger's my favorite of them. Watching Roger is the most beautiful thing ever. But watching what Rafa has been able to do, the way he's been able to play at this level, and just that he literally doesn't take one shot off. He doesn't take one ball off. I've never seen that since Connors, really, where a guy just doesn't take one ball off. Like most of the other greats, they're so great that sometimes they have to try to entertain themselves by doing something other than playing the absolute best shot at the absolute best moment. And Rafa never fucking does that. He just never does it. So in the post era, look, there are I find it fascinating. There's 3 Americans in the top 21 right now, and yet America doesn't care. And Riley's a fascinating figure. Like, you're talking about a guy who goes to the museums for real, not as a gag on weekends, and who obviously reads books and is like an engaged human being. And he's the size of an action hero, like a Marvel superhero. So I think if Riley can somehow go deep enough in a major, that will have a gigantic galvanizing effect, because he is a figure kind of ready for that. I think it's a shame that Monfils has never truly broken all the way through, because he's like, I was talking to James Blake once, and James Blake said he thinks Monfils might be the world's best athlete. And like he said, if people don't understand, even who watch all this, how gifted Monfils is in every possible aspect of sport. And you do see it. You see these moments when he made the run this year at Australia, it was so exciting, because you're like, let's go, I want him to win a major so badly, because I think that's an incredible story. I think Tsitsipas, it's funny, 2 of these top, guys, if I look at Tsitsipas and Zverev, they're both kind of villains in a way. Sure.
Medvedev too.
I don't think Medvedev is much of a villain. I think he is he's like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's like, because he's like a heel face or a face heel. Like, he's kind of likable. He's kind of in on the joke. Here's why. He's in on the joke.
Fair.
Medvedev's in on the joke. He understands when he fell down and did the FIFA thing. Like, he understands the mental game he's playing. I think it seems to me he's so smart that he understands this all on a meta level. Tsitsipas really comes across as just a whiny baby.
Okay.
When
Explain that. Unpack that for me.
Well, like, I can't, like, when he takes those times out and it really feels like bad. It feels like he doesn't really understand what a horribly bad sport he's being.
Sure.
And his sort of having, like, whereas Medvedev made that move, he would talk about it with a wink, and you would understand that he knows it's a dumb rule, that they should change the rule. Yeah, he's taking advantage of it because he's smarter than the other guy. Whereas Tsitsipas, it really feels like a guy who's like, you know what it feels like with Tsitsipas? It feels like in The Princess Bride when suddenly Count Rogan turns and runs away, because it feels like he is, he gets scared and he runs back to the locker room. I mean, do you think Tsitsipas I'm wondering about Tsitsipas. Like, sometimes it seems to me he's selfish, like when he storms off the court and takes a timeout, but I don't want to be unfair to the kid. I mean, how do you see it?
Yeah. No, yes and no. I think Tsitsipas, and I think to an extent all tennis players, and Ben Rothenberg, when he comes on the show, he calls it main character energy. I think to an extent all of these players have main character energy because in their entire lives it's been all about them. And I also think it's worth remembering 90% of these kids were homeschooled growing up. They didn't have the big social cues, and they just don't understand certain things that they're just so accustomed to doing are a little bit off. And I do think Stefanos Tsitsipas, he's a little bit off. And obviously, this is not meant to be disrespectful. He's been super parented, right? Like, his parents have been a part of every decision he's made his entire life to get to this point. And guess what? It worked. Like, shout out to the Tsitsipas family. They've got a kid who's already a Grand Slam finalist, top 5 in the world in tennis. At the same time, the way you described it perfectly. Medvedev will wink at the line judge as he says something funny to them, and he kind of gets it. I think Zverev is very aware, hypersensitive to the perception of himself, and he lets that get in his head. Tsitsipas is just the odd duckling of the group, where Tsitsipas just beats to his own drum, and he's vlogging, and he's doing his music, and all these different things. It's not too unlike Opelka. I would just argue it's the Greek version.
Sure. Other than I think, like, that's what I'm saying. Other than I feel like sometimes he's just disrespectful to his opponents in a way that I don't dig. because what I,
but I don't see. I don't think if that's disrespect. I think that's just him being him. I don't think he means it as disrespect. That's what I'm trying to say. Is I think he's so naive about it and so unaware that like, oh, there's another person here on court who's also playing this match right now. Like that doesn't even cross his head.
Well,
it's
that's
like,
fascinating. I mean, you've opened my eyes. Thanks. You've opened my eyes to watching him in a different. I'll watch him in a different way.
Sure.
I just don't find myself rooting for him, whereas I root for Medvedev. Sometimes, and. I don't know. Has Medvedev said anything about the Ukrainian conflict?
A little bit. He said.
I know what Rublev. I love what Rublev did. I love what Rublev did.
And that is gutsy stuff. And it is so fascinating because again, there's so many different personalities. You've got the FA, Felix Auger-Aliassime, who might be the kindest human in the world. You've got Carlos Alcaraz and Yannick Sinner, where you're like, what is this here? It feels like we're just like beginning to,
I can't wait to see Sinner. I really expected Sinner to go further. Yeah. I keep waiting. Look, it's so much pressure on him. And as I said to, John McEnroe was giving him shit on one of the broadcasts. Max, probably, one of my 5 biggest sports heroes. There's no bigger John McEnroe fan, and Patrick's a dear friend of mine. But Johnny Mac was on TV going like, this kid's got to win a major already. What's going on? What's taking him so long? And I texted Patrick. And I just said, could you maybe remind Johnny Mac that he didn't win till he was 19?
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy because they're so good so fast. And you just figure like, oh, yeah, they're going to win a slam. And, again, some fun stats for you. It's interesting. You look right now on the men's side. So I like to make these clubs top 10, 15, 20, 25, and players who are, top 10 in both hold percentage, how frequently they're holding serve, and break percentage, how frequently they're breaking serve. There are 4 guys right now in the top 10 club over the last 52 weeks. You want to try and guess them?
Go ahead. You say it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's exactly who you think it is. It's Novak, it's Rafa, it's Medvedev, and it's Zverev. But the 2 guys who are top 15 club, which is, 15 in hold and break percentage, is Casper Ruud and Yannick freaking Sinner. It's like the numbers say it, the eye tests say it, all of these different things say it. He has been one of the 8 best players in the world over the last 52 weeks. And I do think that success is coming. But yeah, that's Johnny. Hyperbole is always your friend.
The other great thing I love to watch in terms of the narrative is, and it's great if you watch Tennis Channel and you get in a rhythm of watching it. It's so awesome when guys grab a hot moment and like, what's the French guy's name? Molinar? How do you say his name?
Oh, which French guy? I was gonna say there's a couple of them.
His name starts with an M. He's like number 50 in the world. Hold on.
Italian Musetti. Maybe I'm thinking of the M's. There's a lot of good M's. Yeah. No, I like this. This is rare.
Mannarino.
Oh, Mannarino. Sure. Okay.
Like Mannarino had a great run, a couple tournaments in a row.
Oh, Australian Open. Sure. Yeah.
But then after the Australian Open, like the next week, he got to the 3rd round or the quarters. Because I was watching it, and it's really fun when you watch somebody. And he had such an odd game. That guy. He plays so strangely.
He'll be at a country club for the next 15 years after he retires. Just that little lefty roll.
Yeah, but it's so fun, like sort of watching, this guy's catching a moment where he's seeing the ball. He must be suddenly seeing the ball really clearly. And it's one of those great things about sport too. Like, for some reason right now, he's just making contact in the perfect place. The ball's hitting a 1/4 inch closer to the line. He's putting a little bit more pressure on his opponents. He probably has no idea why. And he knows it's going to go away, but he's playing it for all it's worth in this moment. And that's another thing that I love about watching the sport is seeing people try to, put it all together and try to, make a run.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And let's flip gears. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to hear your thoughts on the women's side because, us in the tennis intelligentsia, I'll include myself in there, who are in the day-to-day struggle. And by the way, there's this open seat for you on the Intelligentsia Council should you want it, Brian.
Thank you.
But we look at the women's game right now. Ashley Barty is undeniably exceptional, and you look at the numbers for her. She's holding over 80% of the time. No other woman's above 78%. Obviously, you look at the success she's had, winning Wimbledon, winning the Australian Open, doesn't drop a set on her way to the title. So the perception, though, amongst people who follow day in, day out, yes, she is excellent. But it's that the rest of the field, that there's not a worthy challenger to her right now because Osaka's not playing week in, week out. And there's a lot of really, really good players right now. But you look at the last 52
people
weeks,
are always trying to forward that narrative in women's tennis. And I reject the narrative. I mean, listen, when we talk about, I mean, you talk about the most fascinating people in tennis, and Murugusa is like the top of the list. I mean, you're talking about a narrative. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's got all the qualities we just talked about of people like Opelka and Medvedev, someone who's, a brilliant person, somebody who's another person who's physically a Marvel superhero kind of she's the movie star, beautiful person. She's, that she's finally able to go, she won 3 majors in her life, and she's incredible. And yes, she has other interests. Probably. She's probably not fully devoted only to tennis, but like, she's a threat to me anytime she steps on the court. That she got back into, she's number 9 in the world now or whatever. It's an incredible story, right? I don't understand why she's not in America an enormously famous person. She has every ingredient that you would think of her story. I mean, you're talking about somebody who went to Harvard Business School in her off time. Like, it's insane to me. And so, like, Murugusa is somebody I'm totally think is like, I'll watch anytime she's playing, because I just want to figure what's going on in her head. Like, what is she thinking about? Because she's so smart. And then we talked about Jen Brady, who, I love and as a narrative thing, like, I love a late in life for tennis, like college. Other people didn't really believe in her and didn't really believe she had the game to get there. And then suddenly on a huge stage, she's like really ready for it. And that forehand is just incredible. Like, it would be so much fun. You just get the sense that it would be so much fun to try to return that forehand. Yeah. And I love talking to guys too, who are like, I'd beat the women. It's like, dude, Jen Brady would beat you 6-0, 6-0. You would get no points off of her. Like,
Sabalenka would crush you physically, emotionally, spiritually. Yeah, 100%.
You would get no point. There would be no points for you. Like, forget about it. And I've played with Division I, like women who play D1. They're so good at tennis. It's crazy. And people don't really understand that. But Barty, what's so great about Barty is that she's a killer, and elegant too in the way she handles herself. I mean, whatever goes on in the locker room, like, most of them are not on the level that some of the guys are. And they're just not as, there have been over time, there have been women who are, but right in this moment, it doesn't feel like that. I also love watching Pliskova play. I think she's so much fun to watch. I always feel like she's at war with herself, and you wish that she could just not be at war with herself. Yeah. But I love her game. I
also imagine at this stage it's probably difficult for you to bend your knees, much like her. So you feel some relationship there. With her. You're like, I do that. All right, I'll rapid fire here for down the home stretch. You just tell me if you're in or out on this American tennis player. We already did the Opelka talk. Frances Tiafoe, in or out?
Oh, man. As a storyteller, how could you not be in? I mean, it's the best story in the world. I would like the forehand to be more consistent. But I mean, that's the best story in tennis. It's the dream. It's a novel. It's incredible.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Between him and like Tommy Paul's incredibly good looking. So you're like, there's another bite at the apple, and he's top 40 in the world now. Here's the one I would throw at you though. Americans love dynasties. The Korda family. Sebastian.
Amazing. It's crazy and amazing. Them, right? I know. I saw that kid play a college match on TV once, and I was like, how's there another one? Like, how is that guy? Yes, obviously, like, that's just an amazing, that's just an incredible and an amazing thing. He must be good at golf too.
It's probably just ridiculous. And I bet they're good at tennis. Like, I bet they can hang too when it comes to that.
Of course they're good at tennis.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she's the best golfer in the whole world. Like, the skills translate.
Oh, it's crazy. And so I'll assume in on Korda. What's your take on Brooksby?
You mentioned Tommy Paul a second ago, so I want to talk about Tommy. I have a question for you, which is Brooksby. I've only watched a couple matches. Like, I watched recently a match. I don't think I have a strong enough take yet.
Okay, but give me the Tommy Paul take.
Well, I watched him. I mean, I am really a pathetic tennis junkie. So, like, I've watched too much World
Acapulco
Team.
quarterfinals. It's on. Yeah, it's on.
But I just watched too much World Team Tennis. Even like when they did that World Team Tennis thing at the end of the year, I watched every match.
Yeah.
And like I like that he tried. Yeah. Like Tommy Paul was trying. Yeah. Like a lot of people don't try really in the World Team Tennis format. Mm-hmm. And he tried in every match, I thought. And I like really, because yes, the dude's like too good looking and got everything going for him, 24 years old. And I like the idea because Connors would have, this is the thing, like Jimmy would have tried. Like he would have given a shit. And Tommy Paul seems like he gives a shit. Like, yeah, I think that guy wants to be great. I can't tell if, in a world of giants, I mean, that's why I pronounce Denis Shapovalov. How do you pronounce
Shapovalov.
So Denis Shapovalov, like it's incredible, right? That guy's able to hang with his physical stature compared to these other people. It's crazy to me. It's so beautiful. Like that. I mean, he literally has to jump to get leverage over the backhand, the one-handed backhand. So Tommy Paul's not really a physical specimen like those other dudes, right?
I would disagree there. And I know, so Berrettini, I mean, first of all, the future of modern tennis, and this is something we've discussed before. I'll just have to have you back on. We can do this in part 2. The big man. I mean, Medvedev, Zverev, Tsitsipas is 6'4", FAA is 6'4", Khachanov's of the world.
Is Tommy Paul, I thought Tommy Paul was smaller.
So he's like 6'2". He's 6'2".
Oh, okay, fine.
My thing is, though, just the fluidity. Like, Tommy makes everything on a court look so easy. And it's just about, for him, been finding that consistency, as it is for any 22, 3-year-old in life. But wins his first title at the end of last year. And I agree with you. You can just tell these past 6 months, something has clicked. Like, he is, there's just an aura around him where it's just, he makes it look so easy. What's his weapon? What's the weapon? Like, if I think about all those other that's the issue.
There's a very clear weapon.
So the plan A is not there right now. That's the thing. Plan B, C, D, he's got that all. He can read, he can react, he can hit the +1 forehand, and he does have the athleticism, the springiness to snap off a ball down the line and go flat. The problem is that's when the errors pile in. And so I would say it's in the Goffin model. That's probably the best case scenario for him, would be a David Goffin type career. Yeah.
I mean, I would love it. Look, I really want like Johnny Mac talks about. I mean, it would be. I really want a men's American champion, and that would bring tennis all the way back. Mm-hmm. Our country's just endless racism and misogyny prevented when the Williams sisters were dominant for 20 years from that being enough to bring America all the way back in tennis. We need but because of the ills of our country. If one of these dudes does it, we'll be in, better shape.
No, I agree. And sadly, I agree with you, despite the fact, again, women's side absolutely loaded right now. LA versus New York tennis. Give me the lowdown.
As a lifelong, New Yorker, loyal to my bones. I mean, there's just no comparison. Like LA is just so much better for tennis. You can play every day, outside, all the time. I mean, it's not. Yeah, anyone who's like, this is one of the things that's just underappreciated is that Johnny Mac did that from Long Island, New York. It's so crazy from Douglaston, Queens. Like you really can only play a few months of the year outside, and it's half the year. I mean, half the year he would have to go to Port Washington and play with Tony Halifax. Like there wasn't the competition. It's just his brilliance and his athleticism were so transcendently great that he could figure it out mostly from here. It's kind of an unheard of thing. Really.
Mm-hmm. What's the more enjoyable scene of the two? Definitely LA. It's just got to be everyone's happier.
Well, like LA, I was a big skeptic, so I was just out to shooting Super Pump for 6 months. And I was a big live ball skeptic at first, but live ball is like the most fun you can have on a tennis court. Yeah. And nobody on the East Coast even knows what that is. Like I've tried to bring it to place. Nobody knows what live ball is. In New York, I play in every place in New York you can play, I go, and like nobody's heard of it. Mm-hmm. And in LA, every night you could basically find a live ball going and you could get in there and get exercise and have a great time playing live ball. I don't understand why it hasn't come to New York yet. The place I play in the summer, I'm determined to bring it there this summer and get some guy, like find a night where we can get a good live ball going.
Who lies about their level more, people in LA or New York?
Okay, this is a deeper question because in LA, I'm a 4.25, not a 4.5. And in New York, I'm a 4.5. Because but it's not lying. It's like if you think about the way clubs are organized.
Sure.
I think you get to your true what you are pretty quick in either place. It's just that you can be playing it like because the descriptors make all of us actually like five. If you look at those descriptors, you can hit spin from both sides, you can hit all the serves, you have all the strokes. Like then everyone's a 5-0. Everyone can do those things.
Yeah.
But because so then you have to look at it and like 4-5s in LA are really close to 5-0. 4-5s in LA, like there are guys I know who played tennis at college, D3, who would identify as 4-5s, where they're really 5-0s. Here in New York, they would be playing on a 5-0 court probably. But I can take I have one friend who's much better than me, but I was able to take a couple sets off of him. He played college. And that's why I think he's like a 4-5 in LA, he'd be a 5-0 here. But like the guys in LA who are 5-0s, I can't take there's zero chance I could take a set. You just could never break for me enough that I could, even if I served out of my mind, it wouldn't matter. I eventually would just lose.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I would say the difference is a former college tennis player in LA played at San Diego. A former college tennis player in New York played at Colgate. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Colgate, but that's the difference. My friend Peter played at Connecticut College. Sure, exactly.
And he's a 4-5. That's why he would say he's a 4-5, not a 5-0. Like, he's great, but he played at Connecticut College. He didn't play D1.
No, 100%. I would agree with you. Last one for you. More difficult partnership. First time in doubles or first time writing together?
Oh. Well, my partner and I have been best friends since we were kids, and he's the only person I really write with. So that's very easy. We also are really good doubles partners. Yeah. Doubles is, look, I much prefer singles because I hate letting down my teammate.
Okay.
But live ball helps. Like live ball, you're constantly switching partners. Yeah. You're in it. You're trying really hard. LA made me a much, much, much better doubles player because I played so much live ball out there.
Mm-hmm. So, again, I got to see the game. This is what this is telling me. I need the film. I got to break down the session. I got to see what the weapon is. Sounds like the inside-out forehand. Again, that's the setup shot for you. And, again, it sounds like, given the Pliskova love, the movement might be a bit lacking.
What level do you play at?
I mean, if I play 4-5, it's Midwest tennis, so we're here in Indianapolis, so it's like the in-between.
David Foster Wallace. You're David Foster Wallace tennis, yeah.
I'm essentially, it's a very good comp for me, down to, again, I need to shave. But you look for Midwest tennis, I mean, I'm a 5-0. I'd be lying if I said I was a 4-5. I played club in college. I could have played at a smaller school or D3, but I really wanted to go to Michigan, so I went there instead. And, you get kicked out if you played club tennis and played nationals, whatever. You have to play 5-0. That's just a USTA rule. I would say, on the good days, I am a 5-0, let me tell you. On the right day, it can still look good. The shoulder's not what it once was.
I understand.
And so you get there.
Where do you think...
Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you will say what? No, say it.
Before I left, because I'm from Michigan, and obviously, the community there are a lot of, I don't want to say Brian Koppelmans of the world, but people like you who are looking for younger people to hit with. And those are my favorite tennis sessions because the passion, I think, of the 40-plus-year-old who still wants to get after it every day, it just makes for good tennis.
Last thing, because I gotta go, is how good do you think Wallace was?
Great question. 3.75, I would say. We really need the quarter increments. I don't think he was a 4-0. Like, I think you read his perspective, that's someone who's a little envious of a good forehand.
I think he was a 4-0. I think he was a 4-0, not a 4, maybe not a 4-5, but I bet you he beat some 4-5s.
Yeah.
with the old mental ability. All right. Here, if you want to wrap it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, I appreciate it as always, my friend, and I'm very grateful for you taking the time to chat. Spot is open for you on the show anytime.
Have me back. I want to come back after. Have me back after a major. Thanks a lot. This was super fun.